Good evening, you are watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman Television. First, the headlines. The Sultanate supports the project of archiving UN historical records to digital technology. His Excellency, the Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs, discusses with his counterpart on the updates of the region. And Russian jets hit the targets of Daesh and of other rebel groups in Syria. Those were the headlines. Now for the news in detail. The Sultanate stressed its adherence to dialogue as a basic foundation to solve regional and international problems. This came in a speech delivered by His Excellency Yusuf bin Alawi bin Abdullah, Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs, before the General Assembly of the United Nations in its 70th round in New York. Also, the Sultanate called for solving the Yemeni crisis through dialogue and condemned targeting the residence of the Sultanate's ambassador in Sana'a. It also welcomed raising the Palestinian flag at the United Nations and called for giving the Palestinians their legitimate rights. It also urged the international community to establish the concept of partnership to achieve sustainable development in the world. Protecting the history of the United Nations and preserving it from being lost was the center of discussion in the meeting held by His Excellency Yusuf bin Alawi bin Abdullah, Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs, with His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, UN Secretary General. They discussed the Sultanate's contributions in supporting archiving project of UN historical records from the traditional way to digital technology. The project aims to transfer a huge number of records to digital system to protect the UN history during the last 70 years. Ban Ki-moon praised the Sultanate's support, which coincides with the UN celebration of the 70th anniversary. His Excellency Yusuf bin Alawi bin Abdullah said during the signing of the project's agreement, stressed that the Sultanate will get electronic copies of these archives and historical records that can be accessible for researchers through contacting the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the future. The two sides also discussed issues related to Middle East and the role entrusted to the Sultanate by the United Nations in the Yemeni issue. Latest developments in Yemen and Syria were center of discussion at the meeting held by His Excellency the Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs with his American counterpart John Kerry at his residence in New York City. Bilateral relations between the two countries were also reviewed during the meeting. The two sides also discussed a number of issues of common concern. The two ministers agreed to be in continuous contact for consultation on working to return calm and stability to the region and focusing on exerted efforts to assist and relieve the worsening of human suffering. Within the context of bilateral relations binding the Sultanate and Algeria, His Excellency the Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs met with his Algerian counterpart Ramadan al-Ma'amra. They discussed relations of common concern and ways to enhance them in different fields. They also exchanged views on a number of regional and international issues. His Excellency the Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs met with Her Excellency Retno Marsudi, Foreign Minister of Indonesia. During the meeting, they discussed bilateral relations between the two countries as well as ways to enhance them on both economic and investment levels. Russians hit Daesh group targets and other rebel groups in Syria today, on a fourth day of airstrikes by Moscow in support of President Bashar al-Assad, which have dramatically escalated foreign intervention in Syria. Russia's air campaign in Syria, where a US-led air coalition and fighters on the ground from regional states are already entangled in the 4-year-old civil war, has drawn strong criticism from the United States and its allies. Britain's defense minister said that only 1 in 20 Russian airstrikes in Syria were aimed at the hardline group, which control large parts of eastern Syria and western Iraq. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said at least 14 militants had also been killed. Russia said its planes made over 20 flights in Syria in the past 24 hours. Still to come in our news bulletin. Myanmar remains one of the lowest global spenders on health, and basic medical help is still out of reach for many. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. Loyalist Yemeni troops and Gulf Arab forces seized control of the Arabian side of the strategic Bab al-Mandab Strait, linking the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden from Houthi fighters. 6 months of war in Yemen has raised fears for the security of oil supplies through Bab al-Mandab, a main thoroughfare for vessels heading for the United States or Europe from Asia or the Gulf. Its western shore is controlled by Djibouti and Eritrea. Residents on the Yemeni side of Bab al-Mandab reported airstrikes and shelling by warships in support of a ground thrust. A Houthi spokesman said the Saudi-led coalition and its allies had provoked a battle for the strait in a blatant escalation of the country's civil war. Israeli occupation troops and armored vehicles crossed into Gaza's border areas early today. Palestinian news agencies said an unusual movement of Israeli military bulldozers were seen near the eastern separation fence between the Gaza Strip. The military bulldozers razed the area while Israeli warplanes conducted low-altitude flights over parts of the Gaza Strip, firing flares into the sky. At least 30 people were killed and several hundred are missing following a devastating landslide on the outskirts of the Guatemalan capital. Authorities said that some 600 people are missing, an estimate based on the 125 homes that the landslide destroyed or damaged after heavy rains. At least 26 bodies have been so far been recovered from the village of El Cambray Dos, according to the rescue services. The landslide was triggered by heavy rain in the town of Santa Catarina Pinola and small village about 15 kilometers east of Guatemala City. The Omani Association for Elderly Friends organized a ceremony in the Wilaya of Rustaq to mark the World Elderly Day, which falls on the 1st of October each year. The ceremony witnessed a huge attendance from members of the society. It included various activities, namely poetic sessions, plays, and others. The accompanying exhibition focused on traditional crafts products made by the elderly. The event came to stress on the importance of the elderly category and their role to instill the good values among the young generation. The Omani Women Association held a traffic safety exhibition in the Wilaya of Shinas. It targeted school students, especially the young, to teach them the traffic safety rules and how to stay safe when riding the school bus. The association, in cooperation with the Royal Oman Police, aimed to acquaint the members of the society with the traffic safety laws, as well as spread the culture of safe driving on the road. The participants expressed that such events are useful for the children to teach them the basics to stay safe on the road in an entertaining way. Ambulance service in traffic-choked Yangon is a new lifetime in Myanmar, where healthcare was crippled by decades of chronic underfunding. Here is a report.
There's a new arrival on the streets of Yangon. Their sirens usually ignored in a country where ambulances are rarely seen. But volunteers like retired bus driver Min Tain are trying to plug the gap with free services.
I saw some people die before they could reach hospital because there was no timely transportation or ambulance. Even though I wanted to help, I could not, as I had my responsibilities, driving passengers.
It's a problem they're well aware of at Myanmar's biggest public hospital. After decades of chronic underfunding during military rule, the government is at last buying its first fleet of emergency ambulances.
The community ambulances, they are very useful. Currently they are running, government has nothing. But government now try to start and try to lead them and try to train them to get a good system here.
Ambulances were not the only casualty of the junta era. Myanmar remains one of the lowest global spenders on health, just 1% of GDP in 2013, according to the World Bank. And basic medical help is still out of reach for many. For the poor, even death comes at a steep cost. Charities like this one have stepped in, providing free funeral services since 2012.
Some people run into financial difficulties in holding a funeral, as living expenses are very high.
With landmark elections coming up, many hope their country is poised for change. But for now, volunteers like these are happy to prop up a creaking system in which most have learnt to fend for themselves.
Now for the general weather forecast. Clear skies will prevail over the Sultanate with cloud accumulation and fog late night and early morning along the southeastern coast. Winds will be northwesterly light to moderate along the coasts of the Sea of Oman, while it will be northerly to northeasterly light to moderate along the rest of the Sultanate. Seas will be slight with a maximum wave height of 1.25 meters. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. The Sultanate supports the project of archiving UN historical records to digital technology. His Excellency, the Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs, discusses with his counterparts on the updates of the region. And Russian jets hit the targets of Daesh and of other rebel groups in Syria. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studios, it's good night.